We're back with another video for you. This one is long overdue. I apologize. A month ago we unboxed the Trek Pro Micro 3V CBE sight, and I told you I was going to make one sighting it in. So I started to make that video a couple days after we did the unboxing, and I didn't like the setup whenever I was done. So that required me to make some changes. The change that I decided to make was I took the 60-pound limbs off and I swapped them out with 70-pound limbs. The challenge with that is for the result, you can't order 70-pound limbs anymore. I could have got 65s. I really didn't think that was gonna get me what I wanted. So I finally found somebody that had 70-pound limbs sitting around. I bought them, they shipped them, and here we are. I got them put on a couple days ago. So we're out here, we're outside. Just got our 30-yard mark. I'm going to talk about that here in a minute as well. But the reason that we had to make the limb swap has to do with the pin gap on these pins. And for me, the pin gap was too far apart. They had plenty of adjustment in them. It's not like I ran out of adjustment, and there was still plenty more adjustment in these pins, even after I had it sighted in for the poundage and the arrow weight and all that. Really, it was a good setup, but for me, that bottom pin, shooting at it max distances, you couldn't see the target. So I'm going to show you a different clip here real quick. We're going to zoom in on this sight. As you see, really look at that bottom pin, and you can see that it's in the base of that first 20-yard pin. These pins are super narrow, but the base isn't. So the part that slides up and down, you know, to give it rigidity, it's really wide. And so when your pin gap is as big as this one was, that bottom pin was inside the base of that top pin, and you got past 60 yards, and it made it really, really difficult to aim on target because you couldn't see the majority of the target. And if you got out to 100 yards, you couldn't see the target at all. So for me, that was a problem. Had to make an adjustment. I knew I didn't want to shoot a lighter arrow, and I knew I really wanted to give this sight a chance. So that meant 70-pound limbs. So that's what we did. That's why it took so long. But here we are. So came out here this morning, a little bit ago, before it really started to rain, and I started sighting in for my 30-yard pin, and got ran off by the rain. But we came back out a minute ago, and so right now we are dialed in at 30 yards. That's where you got to start with this sight. If, for example, you're doing what I'm doing and you're going to have a 20-yard pin, a 30-yard pin, and a 40-yard pin. So whatever your middle distance is between your three pins, you got to start there, because that middle pin, that middle pin does not move. It stays stationary. There's no adjustment in that pin at all. So find your middle pin and then go to the distance that you want to set your top pin to. For me, that'll be 20 yards. I'm going to go in there. To make adjustments to it, you loosen the set screw on the side, and then you take your Allen wrench on the bottom, turn it left and right. That'll make that pin go up and down. Find your 20. I'm going to go back to 40. I'll do the exact same thing, and then after that, we can start shooting max distances. So on this sight, it has dual sight tape indicator marks. Super cool, super handy. So for me, I'm going to base every adjustment to my sight for distance, I'm going to base it off the bottom pin. I'm going to do that for two reasons. Reason number one, I want to use the bottom pin because that's closest to the bottom of the sight housing, which will help get me the max amount of distance out of my bow before I start running into clearance issues with my arrow. And then second reason I want to use that bottom pin is because I can set my bottom sight indicator mark for that pin, and then I can set a top one for my top pin, and then no matter how far out I adjust my sight, I'll know exactly the range that all three of my pins will hit in. So, you know, if say you're in the deer woods, you're in the tree stand, and you got your bottom marker for your bottom pin set at 60 yards, and you know you're about to make a 60-yard shot on a deer, and then you draw back on him, say he turns and he comes back towards you so far, and then you know you have to let down and you got to re-range him. If it's still within that same sight range for those 3 pins, you may not have to adjust your sight at all. You may just have to re-range and then go ahead and draw back, and that might be just enough time saver for you to harvest that deer instead of having to readjust your sight. So anyways, that's why I'm gonna run mine the way that I am. I'm not telling you how to do it for you, but that's what I'm gonna do. Then the last thing I'm gonna touch on, after all these cars go by, the last thing I'm gonna touch on is the release that I'm gonna use this hunting season. I'm gonna use the new Scott Select. I'm gonna run it in a 3-finger, and I just got this thing out of the package and started shooting it, so I've still got some adjustments to make to it, but super lightweight. I like to hunt with a hinge, and I'll probably carry my thumb release around a little bit with me, but this is probably what I'm gonna make all my shots with. Lightweight, it'll fit nice and easy in my bino harness on my chest. It won't take up any room and doesn't add really any weight at all, versus my, you know, brass style release. I prefer the heavier release, but this will be easier to pack around, and then I won't have to worry about tearing up my tournament release either. So that's the video in a nutshell. I'm sorry it took so long to make this, but thanks so much for watching. Comment below, let me know what you think. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. We'll see you on the next one.